Hello, my name's Aviva, and today I wanted to share with you a bunch of romance book recommendations that would be perfect to read this fall. I'm not very picky with my seasons, I really like every season for what it is, but I happen to think that fall has something a little bit extra special going for it. Just I don't know, the changing of the leaves, everybody going back to school, football season starting, Halloween around the corner, sweater weather, there is just a lot of good stuff going for this time of year, and that is why I wanted to share with you a handful of books that I think would be perfect to read right around now. I have a handful of football romances to share with you. I have a handful of back to school books to share with you. And I even have a couple of mysteries. So with that said, first up, I wanted to share Blindside by Candy Steiner. So I did just talk about this in the last video that I made because it was a recent reads video and I just read this book, but I had to share it in this video anyway because I really think that it is perfect to read this fall. So if you're not familiar, this is a college football fake dating story. You're following this guy who is a not professional football player. He's a college football player on his team in college, and basically his girlfriend just broke up with him. He's very heartbroken. And then you also have this girl who is very prude, very shy, very quiet, and she works on the football team as one of the media managers, and basically she has this crush on this guy that doesn't really notice her. So this guy who's on the football team basically propositions her, and he's like, look, can you fake date me so that I could get my girlfriend jealous and try to win her back, and in exchange I will fake date you and teach you how to get this guy's attention because I know you really want to go out with him. So she's like, look, I can really use the help, so yes, I will do that. And basically that is more or less the gist of the story. So they're going to become really good friends, they're going to fake date each other, and obviously they're going to end up falling for each other. So it is just a really good classic fake dating story, and I just think that it was done really well. If you're a fan of The Deal by Al Kennedy, which is a college hockey fake dating story, then I really do think that you're going to like this one. So yeah, Blindside by Candy Steiner. But anyway, after this, I also wanted to share with you Enemies by Tajan, which is another college football romance, but an enemies to lover sort of story. So in this book, you're following this girl who she was best friends with this guy when she was kids, and then as they hit puberty, they kind of started to hate each other. Now they don't really get along, and basically she just transferred colleges to this out-of-state college where she doesn't really know anybody, and happens to be this guy that she grew up with is now a professional football player in the same state that she is now in, and their parents are both really good friends, so that once they find out that they're very much near each other and they don't know anybody else that's around them, they're both basically like, oh look, you should really call up this girl, you should really call up this guy, here's her number, here's his number, get to know each other because you're all alone so far away. And they're both like, thank you, I don't really like this guy, I don't really like this girl. But then happens to be something happens in this girl's life and nobody could really get a hold of her, so this guy ends up taking it upon himself to go and track her down and tell her the news, and the story is more or less going to go from there. And I don't really want to give away anything more than that because I don't want to spoil it for you, but this book is very unique, very different than anything I've ever read. But if you are a fan of enemies to lovers in a college football setting and you have not checked this book out yet, I definitely recommend giving it a shot because I really think that it could surprise you. But anyway, after that, I also wanted to share with you The Wall of Winnipeg and Me by Mariana Zapata. So if you're not familiar with this author's writing style, she is very well known for her slow burn romances, literally 650 plus page book, and they're not going to have their first kiss until the last 10% or so. But if you like slow burn romances and you have not read this book yet, I highly recommend giving it a shot. It is about this guy who is a professional football player, and he ends up getting into a marriage of convenience with his personal assistant who had just quit on him at the beginning of this story. So that is more or less all you need to know about this book. If you are interested in it and you have not read it, I definitely recommend giving it a shot because it is one of my favorite books by one of my all-time favorite authors. So yeah, that is that. And then after that, I wanted to share with you another football romance, which is The Wrong Game by Candy Steiner. So at the beginning of this story, this girl finds out that her husband has been cheating on her. And then right after that, he basically dies. So she doesn't really get a lot of closure. She's not really ready to go into a new relationship or anything like that. But she does have season tickets to football this year. So what she decides to do is take a new guy to every single game. And at the beginning of the story, she's in a bar talking to her best friend about this. And the bartender basically overhears her and he offers himself up as the first date of the season, and she basically decides to go for it because he's already right in front of her, and if not, she'd have to go online and find somebody off an app or something like that. So she's like, sure, you can come with me to the first game. And then happens to be they end up having a great time. He really wants to see her again, but she was very adamant on not making this a dating thing, so she kind of has to turn him down. And then the rest of the story more or less is going to be very guy falls first, guy falls harder, he chases after her sort of situation, and it is just a really cute romance. So if you are a fan of football, then I highly recommend checking this book out because they do end up going to a lot of football games, and it very much gives off like, the fall football vibe. So yeah, The Wrong Game by Candy Steiner. But anyway, after that, I also wanted to share with you Dear Ava by Isla Madden Mills. So this is a high school football romance about this girl who, at the beginning of the story, she was sexually assaulted by one of the football players in her high school, except she was drugged and she doesn't really know who it was that did it to her. So she ends up taking a couple of months off school. And then at the beginning of the story, she finally goes back to school. And on the first day of classes, she ends up getting like this letter in her locker from like an anonymous person saying like, Dear Ava, I've always had a crush on you and I really missed you while you were away. And I happen to be on the football team, but I'm not the one who did it to you. I don't know who did it to you, but I really want to like get to know you better, be there for you, everything like that. And she basically is like, sorry, I don't trust anybody on the football team. So she just like throws it away. And then she ends up going into class, sitting next to this guy. And who do you know is the guy she sits next to? This guy that she like that is secretly sending her letters, but she has no idea that it's him. And she doesn't really get along with him in person. And then obviously it's going to end up being their romance. So it's a very good story, a little bit heavier because of the whole like sexual assault thing. But if you are okay with that and you do like high school romances, then I definitely recommend giving this one a shot. But anyway, after that, I have another high school football romance to share with you, which is Pretty Reckless by LJ Chen. So I might be off on the fact that this guy plays football, but either way, it is taking place in high school. So either way, it does fit into the fall setting. But this is more or less a bully romance. You're following these two people who kind of have a bit of a history. When they were younger, something happens, and this guy basically has been holding a grudge against this girl ever since then. So he really hates her, and at the beginning of the story, however the scenario happens, he ends up becoming her new foster sibling. Like, he's going to be living in her house and going to her school. Like, she's not part of the foster system. Her parents are very wealthy, but like they're very like generous people. So they end up taking him in when he needs a place to stay, and he is going to end up taking this as an opportunity to finally get to her and make her life miserable because he wants to get his revenge. So it is a very interesting story, but if you are into high school bully romances, then I definitely recommend checking this one out because I really did enjoy it at the time that I read it. And if you are looking for a fall sort of book, this does take place in high school at the beginning of the year, and it also does have a little bit of that football, just like fall feeling sort of romances. So yeah, more or less, I just definitely recommend giving this one a shot if you have not read it yet. But anyway, after that, another high school sports romance that I have to share with you is Binding 13 by Chloe Walsh. So in this book, it is a little bit heavier. You definitely do have to look up a couple of like trigger warnings for it, for like, bullying and like, mental and physical abuse from a family member, and a lot of darker topics, more or less. But basically, if you are looking for something to really get invested in this season, I definitely recommend checking this one out. You're following this girl who her entire life, she's been very heavily bullied in her public school that she's going to. So at the beginning of the story, her parents finally decide to pull her out and put her in a private school. And on the first day of classes, she ends up bumping into this, rugby player that's very popular in her school. Like, he's kind of like a rugby prodigy, and basically is going to end up being their romance. And at the beginning of the story, he basically finds out why she just transferred schools, and he ends up becoming like very, very protective of her. He's always like around the corner, ready to like jump in if anybody tries messing with her. And it's kind of very much like a guy falls first sort of story. But basically, it is so much more than that. And I know that it is a bit of a commitment because this is a very, very thick book, and this is only part one to a story. You do have to read Keeping 13, which is the second book in the duet, to get your happily ever after. But if you are willing to commit, then this definitely gives off such good fall vibes because it also takes place in like Scotland. So it's like always raining, and he's playing rugby, and I just feel like it screams fall weather. So if you have not read this book yet and you are somewhat interested in it, I'm going to be the one to say that you should not sleep on it any longer and definitely give it a shot. So yeah, that is Binding 13 by Chloe Walsh. But anyway, after that, another high school romance that I wanted to share with you is A Million Kisses in Your Lifetime by Monica Murphy. So this is another guy falls first, guy falls harder sort of story. You're following this good girl, bad boy scenario in a private school. This guy is like the very popular guy in school, and he's kind of like a little bit of bad news. He's always like, messing things up and like making trouble and things like that. And this girl is like the virgin, prude, very popular girl that everybody looks up to. And basically at the beginning of the story, these two people people are going to get set up in a class to be partners on a project together where they're going to have to get to know each other more. So it's very like forced proximity, opposites attract. Like she is very uncomfortable by him and he is like very weirdly obsessed with her. And it is just a pretty solid high school new adult romance. So if that is your thing, then I definitely recommend giving this one a shot because I really did enjoy it when I read it. But anyway, after that, I also wanted to share with you the Truly Devious series by Maureen Johnson. So this is another private high school setting book, but this is more of a mystery, and it is also a first book in a trilogy. So you do have to read all 3 books in the story to finally like get the answer to the mystery. And throughout all 3 books, there will be a little bit of a romance happening, but it is more of a mystery than a romance. But either way, I still really did enjoy this book when I read it about probably like 2 years ago. But either way, in this book, you're following this girl who gets accepted to this like crazy private school in Vermont, where it's like you kind of have to be like invited to the school because it's only for very, very like unique sort of kids. Like you either have to be like a math genius or a science genius or like a published author at the age of like 15 or like something very unique that makes you different. And basically she ends up getting invited to the school because she is very good at mysteries and happens to be like at solving mysteries, and happens to be in this school there is a mystery that happened to the daughter of the founder of the school like 100 years ago, where she was like murdered and they never found out like, you know, who killed her, or maybe they never even like found her body or anything like that. So basically it's like a whole mystery revolving the founder of the school's daughter, and basically she has been invited to the school so that hopefully she can figure out the mystery. So throughout all 3 books, you're going to get to spend a lot of time in like, you know, a Vermont private school, and it's got a really good setting to it, especially for this time of year. So if you do like mysteries and you are into like, you know, YA sort of books, then I definitely recommend checking out this trilogy because I had a great time reading this when I read it way back when. But anyway, after this, the last book that I wanted to share with you is Here With Me by Samantha Young. So this is an enemies to lovers romantic suspense story. You're basically following this girl who at the beginning of the book was almost in like, you know, a very tragic accident that killed her. And once she gets better, she basically decides that she wants to track down her father that had abandoned her when she was younger. And her father is now working on this like lavish private estate in Scotland. And she basically decides to go all the way there to try to get to know him. And when she's there, she finds out that there is a stalker going around this place that is making a lot of trouble. So she ends up like, you know, just chipping in, trying to help figure out the mystery. And then at the same time, she's going to have an enemies to lovers romance with the owner of this estate, who happens to be very good friends with her father, and happens to be, she never really has liked this guy because she always thought that he is the reason why like her father had abandoned her when she was younger, because he went to go and work for this guy for the past like 20 years or so. And in exchange, this guy does not like her very much for like the reasons of his own. So basically they very much don't get along. They're very much like banter and bicker and are always trying to like bite each other's heads off. So it's got a lot of good like tension and aches going on there. And then it also does have that like Scotland, very atmospheric fall-ish sort of vibe with the mystery. So all around the board, I do think that this is a great book to pick up this time of year. So if you are into romantic suspenses, then I definitely recommend checking this one out. But either way, that is the last book that I wanted to share with you for this video. So I hope that you did find some good book recommendations from this video. If you plan to check any of them out, feel free to leave me a comment down below. I'd love to know which ones ended up piquing your interest. And if you've read any of them, I'd love to know your thoughts on what you thought about these books as well. Or if you have any recommendations for me that you think I should check out this fall, feel free to leave me a comment down below. But either way, with that said, if you did enjoy this video, then please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to my channel if you're not currently subscribed. And either way, thank you so much for taking the time to watch my video because I really do appreciate it. And until next time, enjoy reading.